Hi, I'm Prabhu Teja. So today we are going to Fernando is going to explain the human in the loop concept with a pretty much good example. So let us look into that. So Fernando, you can start that and explain us.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu Teja. And this is also a request from you mainly,
Yeah,
so
right.
that we can um, go deep into this orchestration and human in the loop concept, and look into how we can use the new orchestration framework as well for this
Yeah.
simple scenario. Yeah.
Maybe
So, sorry.
it helps many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll first show you the orchestration process itself and give you a
Okay.
brief introduction about what this is. So you can create it from here, from the studio. This is the latest version and orchestration process. I'll create a process somewhere. Let me to find it. Uh, yeah. In here, there is the orchestration process. Yep. So earlier in the orchestration process, we did not have a framework. Earlier, what we
Right.
had was a empty workflow where we had
Yeah.
to build the framework. So now we have a framework from UiPath to actually try it and
Okay.
use it. So this framework is also little bit um, similar to the RE framework. You will see some similar things like the initiation, but not exactly the same because it works in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, so in here also you will see the initiation phase. This is where
Okay.
you will actually read the necessary configuration stuff from the config file. So this is very much similar to what you see in your usual RE framework, the init
Yeah.
config workflow. And the config file is actually located here in the configuration.
Okay.
And that is also exactly same to what you see in the RE framework. Only thing is you don't see much constants here as you do see
Yeah.
there, but the structure is the same. So if you have any assets that you wish to use in the orchestration process, you can put things over here. And if there are any configurations that you like to use, you can do those here.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. And once that is done, so I'm not going to go into detail there. Then what comes into place is actually your business logic.
Right. In
So
work business.
basically, yeah. So you're asking something, sorry.
No. 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 I was saying nodding to your words.
Okay. So the main thing to remember here in the orchestration process is you're not going to develop everything inside the orchestration process. The main concept here is the orchestration process has to be separate from everything else because the meaning of the orchestration process is to get the data from somewhere and decide whether you need manual intervention to handle certain decisions or not. And if you need manual intervention, you need to create a task in Action Center. And if not, you will automatically do that behind the scenes and get the required output. And once you receive the required output, you have to pass that into a different process where it will update the other applications or the Excel files or whatever you are using.
Right. Right.
So that's the concept of the orchestration process. So this is more
Okay.
like three processes working together or minimum two processors working together.
Right.
But the source has to be separate all the time, because the source, we might get the data from different applications, Excel files, or through API calls. We don't know. It depends. So better to have it separate and use a database or a Excel file or even a queue to connect that process into this orchestration,
Okay.
so that you know these are the data that you need to process.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and once you have done that, in this orchestration process, you will be using that data to figure out whether you need to do manual verification or not. So
Okay.
that is handled in this business process section.
Okay.
So in this business process, it's a workflow. So by default, this is given to us by UiPath. So
Okay.
what we are doing here is, so they're saying if you have a different way of doing it, you can easily replace this part. But we'll
Yeah.
see how we can use the default thing for our example.
Okay.
Yeah. So in here, what we are doing is, if we need to create a task in the action center, we need to create a list of task data.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's called form task data, and this is coming from the persistence activities. So you can add
Okay.
it from here.
Okay.
So by default, when you create orchestration process, it will be there for you.
All right.
So this form task is where you design your form, how you want to present the data to the user in the action center. You build that interface.
Okay.
If you have done anything on UiPath forms, normal
Yeah.
forms,
Yeah.
it's the exact same thing,
Okay.
but used in a different way.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
Okay, so here we create a list.
Okay.
So yeah, so here we create a list, and then so it's basically creating your object list, an empty list of this task data
Okay.
type, and
Okay.
then inside this workflow, you start your business process. So in here, it's empty because this is for you to create.
Right.
So from where you are getting the data, it depends on where you get the data. If it's a queue, you can design it in that way. If it's an Excel file, you can design it in that way. So either way, you build your flow, and these are the our arguments by default that you get.
Okay.
So you get two Boolean variables, sorry, arguments as output. One is saying whether you want to create a task or not,
Okay.
and the other one is saying whether it's the end of the process or not. So this end processing means not ending the entire process. It's meaning whether you have reached the end of your data set.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Got.
a flag that you need to set. And
Okay.
when you're creating a task, you need to have a task title, the catalog, the grouping basically based on some
Yeah.
business logic, the task priority, and where you are going to create this task. In Orchestrator, there are folders, right? In which folder you're going to have it.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the arguments by default you have. And once you have done that, and once you return the flow or the data to the calling function over here, then you
Okay.
decide based on what you return whether you want to create a task or not. If you want to create a
Okay.
task, you go in this direction. If you are not creating a task, that means that can be automatically verified without any human involvement. That's
Okay.
why
Got it.
the false part is not done here. This part is
Okay.
for you to decide how you want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the true section, here you have the create form task. In this
Okay.
one, you can, by clicking on this, you can build your interface as you like,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then assign the values to the fields what you want to display through this form data collection. So I'll show you how to do that. And once you create the task, you add it to the task list that you created here.
Okay.
So basically, whatever the things that you want to verify, you create a list of tasks, and
Right.
then and here you check whether you have reached end of the data set. If not, go and take the next item, check whether you want to create a task or not, and keep on doing that until you reach the end.
Okay.
And once you reach the end, you don't have anything in the true. It will go out of this workflow,
Okay.
and that means we are coming here to the main workflow.
Okay.
And now, by the time you get here, you will see you're giving out the task list.
Okay.
And then what you need to do is, once you create a task, you also need to assign it to someone.
Right. Right.
So that's what happens in here. In
Okay.
here, you will be passing your task list and you'll be writing your own logic on how to assign it. So
Okay.
in the task assignment, you are given with a set of activities. All you need to
Okay.
do is write the rule on how you want to assign the task. So
Okay.
based on the data, you may need to assign it to different people. So that logic you have to write. That you have to
Yeah.
write it in this evaluate task assignment rule.
Yeah.
This is also an empty workflow. But from here, you are returning one thing, how you assign the tasks.
Yeah.
So I'll show you again how to do that. And then
Okay.
once you return it, it will automatically assign by this default thing. And you will be having the task assigned in the action center once
Oh,
this activity is executed.
right.
And then you are coming back to your main workflow again. Now here, so sometimes you will need to run this for a large number of data. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so basically, um, maybe sometimes more than 1,000. So that's
Right.
why we have this option over here that actually says how you want to do the wait part of the process and where you want to do it. So if you see here, you can also wait within the process itself. So
Okay.
by default, you are given with some configuration. Wait in the current process means it will just wait in the same process once you have done
Okay.
all that. But if the data volume is greater than 1,000 by default, you can change this. You can also
Okay.
wait in a different process. You can start another process and
Okay.
handle it there
Okay.
separately for more efficient handling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll not go into that part for now. We'll look into the simplest way of doing it. So it's easy to understand. So in here, we wait in the current process. And so now you have a list of tasks that you created and it's waiting for you to approve.
Okay.
So let's say you have 5 actions that you need to
Okay.
wait for. So the best approach to handle that is to use a parallel for each so that it can handle uh, all those actions in a synchronous way or in parallel in
Okay. If you
simplest
are
terms.
if you are clicking the mean different users are accepting or approving at the same time, then even though it can handle that, right?
Yes, yeah. So the user the task is assigned to is not relevant for this process. That's only for the front end for the user. Only thing
Yeah, yeah.
it knows is there's a task that got assigned to someone and we need to wait for it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Can
So
handle multiple at a time.
yes. Yeah. And we never know, right? In what order the user will reply.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. So we need to use a parallel for each to handle that.
Okay,
So inside the for each we use for the task list, we wait. We wait until someone replies. And once you reply, it will auto resume and then decide what to do after you resume. And that also you can do in the same process or in a different process. Let's say,
okay,
uh, for example, you want to write it into an Excel file. It's simple, right? So
okay.
you can do it inside this. But the data that's getting verified, that you need to log into some application like SAP, for example,
Yeah,
and you need to navigate to different screens and do the data entry there. It's a
okay.
totally different thing. So
Yeah, right.
in such cases, what you can do is you can start and resume another process. You can start another process and pass in all the data from this process to that process so that it knows what to insert and where.
Okay,
So this guy is not worried about that.
okay,
So that's the basic flow of the orchestration.
okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I hope that part is clear.
Right, right. That's cool.
Yeah. Hold on. I need to mute some notifications because mm, yeah. Okay. So that's the flow overall. And now I have actually created a simple workflow to explain all this with a small scenario. So it's easy to follow and it's quick. So I'll minimize this for now.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is my prepared workflow file.
Okay,
And so here I have two workflow solutions. One is to, as I explained earlier, we need to prepare the data for the orchestration process.
right.
So what I'm doing is I'm creating a process to read a Excel file that has about 3 or 4 records,
Okay,
and I'm going to add all that into a queue.
okay,
Just simple two activities. So let's
okay.
look at the data. So this is my sample data set.
So you are calling the sequence in the uh, framework, right?
No, this is a separate process, a
Okay, this is
separate empty sequence or a separate process that you can create by
from
using any of this.
yeah, right, right.
I use the small process to keep it
Yeah,
simple. Yeah. I use the name orchestration source. Don't get confused.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So what happens here is this is my Excel. I have 3 rows with the name,
Yeah,
email ID, amount, and verification status saying pending. So the scenario here is we will add all these items to a queue, and the
okay,
verification logic is if some amount for a specific user here is greater than 1000, we need to assign it to someone so he
okay,
can manually verify it. But if it is less than 1000, you can automatically do the verification. You don't need
okay,
manual involvement.
okay.
So ideally this should get auto verified and these two should get manually
Back.
verified. That's the scenario.
Okay,
So we read the sample data
okay,
and I'm using bulk add queue items activity so that I don't need to loop through the data table. You can add it as a bulk.
Yeah, sure.
And this queue is already created in my orchestrator. The
Okay.
queue name is orchestration items.
Okay.
Um, and you can see the folder path is also called demos. So if I go to
I think,
orchestrator, yeah,
yeah. Your properties
it's
were nothing,
yes,
nothing. It's good. It's good. Go on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So okay, getting back to that, the properties are the output of this, the data table, orchestrator queue name, and where the queue is located,
Okay.
the demos folder. So here
Demo.
in the demos folder, on the queues, I have the orchestration items, the queue.
Okay. Yeah.
So as of now, I don't have any pending items. Everything is successful for now.
Okay.
So what we can do is we'll just run this process to update the queue.
Okay.
So here I run it and it should add 3 items to the queue.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is just simple add queue process, right?
Yes.
Just like.
Yes. This is a simple process. This could be any process. You might get the data from application, Excel file, text file, anything.
A basic simple dispatcher.
Yes. It's simple dispatcher basically. And now you have the data in the queue. And this is the data that you are going to feed into the orchestration process.
Okay.
So the data will look like this. The name, email ID, amount, and the verification status, all 4 columns.
Okay.
Yeah, good. So this part is done.
Right.
Now we come to the orchestration process. I'll
Okay.
close the other one to avoid confusion. So we have only 2. Okay, so in here, in the initiation part, we actually don't need to do anything because it automatically handles everything. So all we need to do is in the config file, we just need to add few things as you do in a normal RE framework because we have a queue here.
Okay.
So I'm adding 2 items. One is the orchestration queue, and this is the
Okay.
queue name, orchestration items.
Okay.
That's the name that you see here. And the other one is where this queue is located in the demos folder.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's all I have in my config file, just to keep it simple.
Okay.
You can also add few other things like the source file path and everything. You can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have the config file prepared, and at the end of this part, you will get the config dictionary as the
Yeah.
config variable.
All right.
So it's almost the same to what you see in the RE framework.
Yeah.
And then we go to the business process. This is where we
Right.
write the logic.
Right.
Yeah, so this is our workflow. Let's open it. And this is the one that I showed you earlier.
Right.
So
Right.
before explaining what I did over here, I'll go into this part where we actually write our logic, as I explained earlier.
Yeah. Sure.
So this is start business processing. Yeah, so in my case, I'm getting the transactions from a queue.
Right.
So what I need to do is I need to use a get transaction item
Right.
to get the items from the queue.
Right.
So in addition to what we saw earlier, I'm adding a new argument because the config argument was not there earlier, right?
Right.
So I'm adding it so that I can use the data in the configuration file to find my queue and the folder.
Okay. Got it.
So I did that.
right.
And in return, I'm also returning the queue item to the business process workflow.
Okay,
Why I do that in addition is because here we are only returning few things like the task title, the catalog, but you're not returning the data.
right, right.
So that's why I'm doing this. So these are the two additional things.
Okay,
So, okay, so now I create a get transaction item
okay,
and that is assigned to a transaction item variable. So
okay,
I'm using the in config to find the queue name and the folder path. The
okay,
variable is defined here, transaction item. And then, as you do in the RA framework, if you are very familiar, if you remember in the get transaction data workflow, you have this same condition to
right.
check whether the transaction item is null
There or not?
or not. Yes,
Right.
basically to check whether you have reached the end or not.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the first if condition. So if
Okay,
the transaction item is not nothing, that means you have data, you come into the then section.
okay,
In here, now we apply our logic, the business rule. Now we have the data and now we can check our amount column, whether it
okay,
is greater than 1000 or not.
okay,
So that's the condition here. So I'm transforming this into an integer and then checking whether it's greater than 1000 or not.
not yeah.
And if it is greater than 1000, now this part I'm using a multiple assign
Okay,
activity. So just to keep it simple, I follow the same order or same
okay,
order of the arguments.
okay,
So now what I need to do? So as explained earlier, if the amount is greater than 1000, I need to create a task to verify
right,
manually.
right,
So the first argument, create
right.
task, is a boolean. Do I need to create? Yes.
Yes.
So I set it to true.
Okay,
Now the task title. So once you create the task, what's the name? What's the title? That you
right,
can say verify amount or anything that you like, just a string. And the task catalog, this is mostly used for those grouping purposes. So you can use anything as you like. So I used amount verification.
okay,
And for the task priority, this is not a string. So you can see the task priority is of type task priority. So how
okay,
you can set the task priority is you can use this keyword. See, I'm using task priority dot and then it will say high, low, medium, whatever.
sure. Okay,
So, and you can just say high or whatever you need. So, in my case, I am setting it to high. And for the other one, where this is located, the folder, that is
yeah,
actually the orchestrator folder.
okay,
So, I'm using that same in config to locate the
okay,
folder path.
okay,
And then the other one, end processing. Have we already reached the end? We don't know. As of
you're right,
now, only thing we know is we have some data to process because this variable is not null.
right,
So we are saying it's not the end of the process, so it's set
right,
to false.
false.
And because I need to send the data back to the calling workflow to create the task, I'm assigning the data of the transaction item to out transaction argument.
Okay,
It's simple. Yeah.
yeah,
And the else part. So this is when you need to create a task. But
right,
when this business logic is false, so when you do not need to manually verify, then you don't need to send all this information. the task name and everything.
Right.
You only need to send three things. One, are you going to create a task? No.
Right.
Whether it's the end of the process?
No.
No. Just like here. And you just pass the data back because you are not creating the task, but still you need to do the auto verification, right? So you need to
Right.
update your downstream application, the file, whatever. So you need to still pass the data, and that's
Right.
why I'm doing it. And the else part here now, when you do not have a item to process. So by default, when all the items in the orchestrator queue is processed or in the successful state or whatever the state other than new. So by default, it gives you records of new status. So if you don't have anything, this will return you null or nothing for this transaction item.
Okay.
So when it is nothing, then what to do? Do we need to create a task again? No, because we don't have anything to create. Is it the end of the process? Yes. Do I have any data to update? No.
Right.
So it's nothing. So
Right.
that's
Right.
it.
There is nothing.
Yeah. This is our business rule.
Okay.
And we return this to our business process workflow.
Okay.
So that part is clear, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
The logic is clear.
Yes. So in here, now just remember about those two flags, task create and process.
Okay.
That is by default assigned to these variables in this
Okay.
workflow. But I had to create two, two arguments. So I'm also assigning those things to
Okay.
transaction item and the in config. I'm passing it.
Okay.
Yeah, because in here you have the in config. It's here.
Right.
Yeah. So once you get the data, then you check, do I need to create a task based on what you written?
Okay.
If yes, you go here to create the task. So I'll explain the false part later. So earlier you didn't have this, but
Right.
because we are working on a created workflow for our scenario, we have it. So I'll explain.
Okay.
So I'll go for this path first.
Okay.
So in the create task, you are using create form task. Now in here, everything is configured, but you need to design the form, how you need to present it.
Right. Right.
So you are going to open form designer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in here, I have already done this, but you can easily figure out because in here on the left hand side, you see everything you need. You see the buttons, the radio buttons, text areas where you can show the data and everything else.
Okay.
So what you can do is you can just drag and drop these stuff into your right hand side area.
Okay.
So I'll do an example. These things are already created so just to show you. So let's say I want to show some value. So I'll drag it over here and you get this screen. This is your
Okay.
label.
Label. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just say test output for user.
Okay.
And these are the properties, whether you want to keep it as enabled for the user to edit or you want to keep it disabled, but still it's showing the value and so on.
Okay.
These things depend on how you want to design it.
Okay.
But the main thing here is uh,
Date.
data is the default value. This
Okay.
field key.
Okay.
Field key is what you are going to use as a reference in your
Okay.
workflow. How we are going to assign the value to this particular element or the component
Okay.
is by using this property name under field key.
Okay.
So this name you have to use. So I'll show you how we have done that.
Yeah.
So let's assume that you have already created this, right? So I have done that. Three text boxes or text fields, and I have also two buttons here, approve and reject,
Okay.
uh, to uh, to have our decision thing.
Right.
By
Right.
default, you will have only approve or the submit, but you can easily drag a button here and rename it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. All you need to do is just rename this field, and
Okay.
that's it. And this
Okay.
theme is what you show as green, blue, red. Success means green, danger means red. So for reject, I thought of using red. So that's why you see as red here.
Right.
Yeah, so that's done. And in here, so let me show you. If I go to edit, so this is where I show the name of that person.
Yeah.
In here, the label is profile name, and that's what you see on the top. And in the field key, you see the profile name. And for the email
Yeah.
address, I see the field key email address
Not right.
and total amount. Uh, the field key is total amount. So this is auto generated based on the name that you give here.
Okay.
Yeah. So now remember that names.
Okay.
And once you are done with this design, just click on save.
Okay.
Save and close it. So you have done the design.
Right.
So all these properties are by default done for you. Only thing you need to configure here is this form data. So now
Okay.
remember, now we have three field names in the designer, and we have our transaction item. This is
Right. Right.
why I return the transaction item, because I need to assign it to this task.
Right.
Yeah, so that is done over here. You're building the connection between your task and the data. So click on
Right.
this. Now do you see anything similar? You have seen this somewhere.
Right. Him, who created that in the
Yes, in the
task
task
form.
that field key is what we mentioned here. And this has to
So,
be exactly as what you see over there.
okay, so it is appending to that value.
Yes. So by default, this screen will be empty. So you need to click on create argument and create it.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So this name has to be exactly as you see in the form designer. Use it. Direction is in all the time because you're inserting values. You're not getting anything out of that.
Okay.
And I'm getting the name from the transaction item, the name, email ID, and the amount I'm giving as an integer.
Okay.
Okay, so one last thing I wanted to show. In the form designer, if you want to provide any numeric fields, to show any numeric fields, you can actually use this, the number.
Okay.
It's also very much similar to text field, but you have few additional properties like uh, few things like this thousand separator. So it's easy to see how the data looks. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now you have created the task and you have assigned, oops, you have assigned everything to the
Right.
form data and you're good. And then this activity is also there by default. It will just add this created task to the list you have here.
Okay.
And what I'm doing in addition is now we are getting this from a queue, right? So I'm just saying to the queue, okay, so I have created the task. So just change your status to successful. I don't need you anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So that And for that, I'm using set transaction status. So that's also here from the activities panel.
Okay.
And under the projects, you are saying what transaction item you want to set it to successful is what you return from here. And the queue folder and the queue name. The queue name is not mentioned here, but transaction item is. And you are
Okay.
setting it to successful.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Set transaction status. So here, set transaction status, you're doing it as successful, but we
Yes.
are not given anything like accept or reject, right?
Yeah. That is a separate thing. This is what I used here is, so this also can depend on your business rule. For now, what I assumed is these items that you see in the queue are for the orchestration process itself. So irrespective of whether they get approved or rejected for now, right? Uh, I will just change it to successful because the task is created.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you want to maintain that data here, whether it
Okay.
got rejected or successful or whatever, you have to do this set transaction status after the wait part.
Okay.
Yeah. So for now, I will just do it here because you already created the task. So
Okay. Okay.
these things, there are some things that depend on your actual requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then once you do that, you go back here. Whether it's the
Okay.
end of the processing, no, right? Because we return false. And you go back here, you get the next item. You keep on doing that in a loop until you reach the end of the queue items,
Right.
and then only you will go out of this.
Okay.
Now the else part. If you do not need to create a task for our scenario,
Okay.
I'm checking. So in here, if you remember, creation task false is we are getting false from 2 points. One is when your
Right.
business logic says that you don't need to create a task.
Right.
Other one is when you actually don't have an item to process.
Right.
So we need to check that. The first thing you check is, do I need to create a task? No. And why don't I need to create a task? Whether it's the end of the transaction or you have something that needs to be automatically updated.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I check here. The transaction item is nothing or not.
Okay.
If it is not empty, then in our simple logic, I need to go to the Excel file and for this particular guy, right? Because it's less than 1,000, I need to change this verify status to auto approved.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I do here. So I just open an Excel file, Excel application scope. So now I have the transaction item. I know the data, but I
Right.
don't know where it is located in the Excel file.
Right.
So I'm doing a lookup range, the simple
Okay.
lookup range to find where this thing is located. The easiest
Okay.
way is to email. Email ID is unique.
Okay.
So I'm using that email ID from the transaction item to find where it is located. So this lookup range will give you the cell of the email ID where it is located. So in our case, it will return us,
Like that
uh,
cell.
yeah, it will return us C3.
Right.
And so what I need to do is, so in the D column only I need to update. So I'm saying do a right cell as auto approved, but in here, this is the output of that lookup range. It's assigned to Excel cell number variable. I'm doing a substring to find only the number part. In a
Okay.
string, you will get two characters, right? One is the
Right.
letter and the other one is the number. So
Right.
I need everything apart from the letter. So I'm doing a substring from the first point. So I get the number. So I get the number. I add it to D column. So I know where
Okay.
it is located now. And I do the auto approved status and save it.
Okay. Got it.
So part of it is already done.
Right.
And when you don't have anything to update, you go here again.
Good. And processing. Right.
Yeah, when processing is at the end. So you go back to your main flow.
Right.
So we are here. And by the time you get here, as I explained, you will have the task list.
Right.
So now we have already created a set of tasks and I need
Yeah.
to assign it to some guy. So
Right.
that happens in the next part. So you go here, open the workflow. This is it. This was there earlier, right? If you remember.
Right.
So in the evaluation assignment role,
Okay.
this was empty,
Right.
but here I have added 3 activities.
Okay.
Now this is one important thing because here we have new set of data types. So if you
Okay.
remember, we get the in task list uh, to assign, and you return the assigned task list.
Right.
So you can see the argument type of the task list is list of form task data,
Okay.
but you are returning a list of task user assignment.
Okay.
So this is coming from system collection generic list, and the rest is coming from UiPath persistence activities task user assignment. That's the data type.
Okay.
So the first thing is we need to create a data type of task user assignment.
Okay.
So I am creating a variable here, a list of task user assignment from,
Okay.
yeah. So if you want to find where this thing is coming from, you can go here and search task user assignment and it will be available here. That's the data type.
Okay.
And you do that. And in the assign, I assign the value to my variable and I create the variable new list of task user assignment. It's
Right.
an
Right.
empty list. Why
Okay.
I do that is because for these kind of variables, we need to first define it or declare it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will throw an error. So once
Okay.
you declare that, then I have the task list. Now,
Okay.
how we are going to assign it to a user also may depend on certain business rules.
Right.
So in our case, just to keep it simple, I'm assigning it just for myself, everything.
Okay.
So what we need to do is we are looping through the task list
Okay.
for each type is the type argument is a form task data because this list is of type form task data.
Yeah. Got
Is
it.
yeah. So we basically need to find that same data type and then in the assign, here I have a new variable task for user. This
Okay.
is task user assignment type. So earlier it was a list of task user assignment
Yeah.
in here. So I'm now creating the data for that list of this type.
Okay.
So this task user assignment also has to be declared in a way. This is how you do that. See this. I'm going to
Okay.
say new task user assignment. So you can see the expected ones. You need
Right.
the task ID and you need the email or the username.
Right.
So the task ID, how you can get it? This item or the loop is of this form task data, right?
Okay.
So you can use that uh, and dot. You can look for the ID. This one.
Okay. Got
This is your ID,
it. Right.
and then you can give the username or the email address of the user. So one thing to
Okay.
remember is this user has to be available in your cloud platform.
Okay. In the orchestrator.
Yes. So when I say the cloud platform, it's here under admin. Um, this user has to be there. Oops. If not, what will happen is it will not assign it to anybody. It will
Right.
just be in that unassigned section in your
Right.
actions, this section.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. So in here under users, where's my users? Yeah. So in here, that guy has to be there. So this is me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So for now, I'm just hard coding because it's just
Yeah.
for me. But in your case, you have to write your own logic.
Yeah. Based on the logic.
Yeah.
Right.
So once you do that, you create the assignment. Then you add it to the collection, this list, using add to collection activity. What you do
Okay.
is task assignment list, what you have over here, and you
Okay.
assign this task for user.
Okay.
So you keep on doing that for all the tasks, and then you just return it.
Right.
Of you return it, you do assign so that you assign it to that
Right.
argument. And then now we are here.
Right.
So now we have the assignment, and you are already given with this assigning stuff. So using the assign task, it will automatically assign everything based on your values provided.
Okay.
And now you have the task created, you have assigned it to your users, and
Okay.
uh, now only thing remaining is wait
Yeah.
for the
Right.
user to complete it.
Right.
So in our case, as I explained earlier, we are waiting in the current process because it is how it is defined by default.
Okay.
So we go here. So all these are done for you. You don't need to do anything.
Okay.
You wait here. It will come here to this wait activity and it will stop. It will go into the
Okay.
suspended state.
Okay.
And once you complete the action,
Okay.
then what I need to do is I need to update my Excel file. So after resume, what you need to do? I want to update the Excel file based on the data returned from
On the
this
form.
wait. So the return
Right.
data is coming from task output.
Okay.
This is of type, uh, let's see, is task output, it's here. It's again from task data.
Okay.
So it will have all the data you assigned. In addition, it will also return which button you clicked, approve
Okay.
or reject.
Okay.
Yeah. So you are passing this data into this after resume workflow.
Okay.
This is also given to you by default.
Okay.
And you go in here. This is also an empty workflow that you will get.
Okay.
You need to define how you want to do your thing. So in my
Okay.
case, now the thing to remember is when you get the data from this task object, this is of
Okay.
form task data. So it will have the task title, the priority, every single thing that you did. In addition, where you can find this data is under this data section.
Okay.
And this is coming in as an object.
Object. Right.
So once you convert it to a string, you will see it is actually a JSON. Let me try to show you like
Okay.
this. It's here because I ran it earlier.
Okay.
So I did it on purpose so I can explain these things as I do this.
Okay.
So this
So
is coming in like this, the data part.
we decentralized this,
Yeah,
Jason.
yeah. So the profile name, remember this? It's
Right.
in the task assignment, but we had two buttons, submit and reject. See,
Right.
I clicked on submit, that's why it's saying true. And I
Right.
did not click on reject, so it's false. But for the
Right.
other guy, I clicked on reject, so it's true. This is false. That's how it
Right.
will look like.
Right. Got it.
So for this one, because you're getting a JSON string, you need to deserialize this so that you can access each and every value easily without doing substring.
Right.
Yeah. So to do that, by default, you will not have this deserialized JSON activities available, but you can easily add it. From
Yeah.
dependencies, you need to look for web API activities and add it,
Okay.
and that will have this deserialized JSON.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is task object dot data dot toString will give you this JSON and it will convert it to a JSON object.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So you can see my output JSON is J object. That's what it returns the value to.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And then lastly, I want to update my Excel. So if I click
Right.
on approve
So
button,
the similar logic which you have played in the auto approval.
yeah, yeah. So this is the same path that we updated earlier. So I'm opening the
Okay.
Excel file. As before, as I showed you earlier, I'm looking for where it is located. But this
Right.
time, earlier I used the transaction item, but here I have the JSON object. So what I do here is
Right.
I get the output JSON, the one that I got from here, dot
Okay.
get value
Okay.
to access what field I need to get out of this. So get value within brackets, I need to use these names. Email address, profile name, whatever I need to use. So I'm looking based on the email address. So I need to use this name I see here, email address. This is the name that I see in the task. When we created the task, the form, that name will be available here. So get value, email address to string, and it will look for the value and give me the cell ID where it is located. Um, and then I need to do what I need to do is I need to see which button I clicked,
Okay.
whether it's submit or the reject. So it's either one. You cannot click both at the same time. So what
Right.
I do is just like before, I check whether the submit thing is false or true.
Okay.
So it's you can see it's not a string, it's returning.
Right.
It's a boolean. So
Right.
I convert this into a boolean using boolean.pass.
Okay.
So if it is true, then I will say same logic as earlier. I
Yeah.
will say it's approved, else rejected,
Right.
and save it. So this is the flow.
Right.
So let's run it and see. So as of
Yeah.
now, do you have any questions?
No, it was clear for me. I have one question after the, once run it, then I can ask that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going here. I'll just so we already ran this.
Can we once publish this and do it? I think.
Yeah, so I'll first show
Demo?
it from the studio so you can see
Okay.
how it is executing.
Okay.
So in the queue, orchestration items, here we have 3 items already.
Right. Right.
And in the actions, I don't have anything pending.
Right.
So I'm going to run this from the main workflow. I'll close all this. And I have enabled execution trail and log activity so you can see
Okay.
how it is running.
Right.
So I'm starting.
Okay.
So as I explained, it will read the config file. And you can
Okay.
see it's opening up. And then it will go through our business logic
Right.
and it will start doing the task creation data, extract all the information and create the task, and it's going into task assignment,
Right.
evaluation, our logic, and here we go. We are waiting.
Right.
So ideally they should create only 2 tasks because one is less than 1000.
Right.
And as of
It should
now,
run.
if you open the Excel file, we should see auto approved.
Right.
And here you go. It's here.
Right.
Yeah. And for these two, let's try to approve that.
Okay.
So while this is waiting, because we are running it from studio, the studio has to be manually resumed once you do the approval. But when you publish it to Orchestrator, it will automatically handle that.
Okay.
So now we are going to this actions, refresh. We have 2 actions assigned to us.
Right.
I'm first doing this. So for this guy, I will say, I will approve this. I'm clicking
Okay.
on approve and just
Okay.
click on complete. And this, I'm going to
It is
say reject.
right.
So click on reject. You're done.
Done.
And here, as I explained, Studio has to be manually resumed because we are running in the debug mode. So I click on
Okay.
resume and it will resume automatically. Go into after resume, check the data, update. You can see.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. The something happened
Okay.
with the file. Yeah, that's fine. So it's like some
It's
communication
here.
thing. So I can
Okay.
retry. Yeah, let's stop it. Yeah, so ideally that's how it works. So if we go
Okay.
here, we should see at least half of the. Yeah, so this is approved and it got failed when trying to refresh this. Um, the reason could be it's trying to access the same Excel file
Okay.
within a parallel for each.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Both both are doing the
yeah.
same
So we
thing.
need to
So
handle
maybe.
that in a specific way. So yeah, this is just for the demo purpose, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, so you can see both branches got executed. Yeah, so that is how you use this parallel for each thing and also the new orchestration process.
Okay. So now I have it though that these are added to the. So once can you publish this?
Okay, so I'll go
Was
here, uh, publish, publish to demo suite, publish. Okay, and let me create the process as well over here. Where is it? Okay. orchestration process is here. So I'm going to create a process. Next. Yeah. And create. So we have the process now.
Right.
So you want me to run it from here?
Yeah, 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 right, right.
Okay. So
So
we'll
it will operate, right? As you say.
yeah. So we'll first do this part.
Okay.
So these two are linked through the a queue, right?
Right.
So for now, I will just trigger this thing to update the queue,
Okay.
and I need to run this process from here. This thing can be actually scheduled, or you can create a queue trigger to run this
Okay.
part.
Okay.
For now, I will just create it from here. This is going to be unattended, and it's going to run in my machine.
Okay.
So it's running, and you should create the actions and go into suspended state.
Okay.
Let's give it some time. Okay, so it's
That's
suspended.
right.
Now in my actions, if I resume,
So,
yes, you are trying to ask something.
I want to know if this is connecting to the. Yeah, yeah. Are you am I audible?
Yeah, you are breaking up a bit, but now I can hear.
Yeah. So, it was resumed at the wait stage, right? If any
Yes.
new data was added now to the queue,
Hmm.
so the task would not be created now, right? Unless or until these tasks are clear.
No. So wait. Okay, it's a good question. So what I did is, if I add new items to a queue, for now, as of now, I haven't given the orchestrator the instructions to run the orchestration process. I ran it, triggered it manually through this start option.
Right.
So what you can do is, if you want to automatically trigger this orchestration process instead of manually running it, you have two options. Either schedule it at a
Okay.
given time, or you can create the orchestrator queue, the queue trigger.
Okay.
And that queue trigger will trigger this process as soon as you see a new item.
Let's say that now the data was added. Let's assume that the trigger was there.
Hmm.
Data was added to the queue, and it was in now that was in the suspended state to get the approval from the firm.
Yes.
Uh, and again, the data was added. So the suspended state will go from suspended to running, and it will add that forms, and again it comes to suspended,
No,
right?
no. This will be suspended until you reply to those actions it created, this process created.
Okay.
If you add some new items again and run
Okay.
the orchestration process again, that guy will create the actions for that process and it will also go into suspended.
Okay. Now got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Once can you run that, add the data again and run it again? So
Okay.
we'll get the two suspended states now.
Yes. So if I run the other part again, this source, so I'm adding again another three items to the queue.
Okay.
Done.
Done. Right.
And yeah, so I need to run it from here. I'm going to start a new process, orchestration, unattended, run it on my machine, start. So this is running. You can see still this is suspended.
Oh no. Okay. Now I got it.
Yeah. So this guy will handle its processes. This guy will handle its tasks.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Clear now.
Yeah. So both are in suspended, and over here I should see four actions.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's try the combination. So I'll try from the one from the first one, three
Okay.
minutes ago. This I'm going to,
Reject.
yeah. So ideally, I should have like four or six items in the Excel, but let's see, right,
Right.
how it works.
Right. Right.
We know the output is going to update.
Right.
So this
Reject.
thing I'm going to reject.
Okay.
And
And
in
from the
here,
first.
see, first one started.
Okay.
This was run 4 minutes ago, and it will update the Excel and stop again. Why? It has another pending item in the action center.
Right. Right.
So it updated the Excel. Let's just have a look to see how it looks like. I know it updated earlier. Yeah. So some
Yeah.
values
Yeah.
are here.
Right. Right.
Now if I run the other one, the one we just created, this one I'll say approve. And now you can see this is running. Can you see? It's handling its own tasks.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So if I do this again, I'm going to reject. See, now this guy is running.
Got it. Got it. No, it's
So
cool.
it will not get confused with what you're trying to do. It will handle
Right.
its
Right.
own thing.
Right.
And now this is running and it will also go into successful.
Right.
Yeah. And your Excel file is updated based on that. Yeah. So this is how you create the orchestration process.
Right. Got it. Got it. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So any more questions on this? Anything that's not clear? All good?
Yeah. Good. All good. Thinking about that. It's fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Thank you, human. So this was the POC. I think it was very good. Mm, handling involving the human in the loop was basically initially it was doing only the back office work. Now we can interact with the user.
Yeah. Yeah. So the one additional thing, if you can see, this is a background process, right?
Right.
So even while things are running, even while multiple other processes are running, this can still execute as
Okay.
long
If
as
it
it does not use any UI automation.
okay, if there is any UI interaction, then do we
Yes.
need to change anything, or it automatically does any other?
Yeah. Good question. So here in the orchestration process, you can see we don't have UI automation
Right.
package.
Right.
Why? Because orchestration process do not use UI automation. It cannot go into that um, orchestration thing when you have UI automation. And that's why we have this rule over here. Do you want to run it here or do you want to do it in a separate process?
Okay. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So this is because it's a simple Excel for our demo purpose. I did it here. But
Right.
ideally, as I explained earlier, the source part from wherever you are getting the data, that has to be a separate process. After you do the verification, what you do, that has to go into another process. So
Okay.
orchestration process is in the middle, combining or connecting these two through the human
Okay.
in the loop.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now got
So what you
it.
can do is, if that's the case, let's say you are updating into a in-house
Web
application
application.
like SAP or web something.
Right.
You can start a new process, start job,
Okay.
and pass the
So
arguments from
So,
here.
so one thing, so when the tasks are approving parallelly, it was doing the things parallelly, right?
Hmm.
So in the when it comes to UI interaction, that cannot be possible, right? Because uh, the the application would be the only one, and it cannot parallelly work with opening another one or something.
Yes. Yeah, that's another good question. So again, how you build the link. Now remember, from the source to the orchestration process, how we did the build connection through a queue.
Okay,
And here what you can do is either you can say, okay, I'm not going to start a different process here. I will just, after resume, I will add everything to another queue. That queue will
okay,
trigger another process. It will take care of what it needs to do.
okay, got it. First,
Else,
you
yeah,
can schedule that.
else,
Okay,
yeah,
we can schedule that process at any time, and we can run it by collecting the data from complete day.
yes. The other approach, you can still say, okay, I have the verified data, start another process. So let's say this in after resume process name, it's a process to update a web application. So what you can say is you are passing this data directly to the process itself, form task data, and saying, hey, start the process and here is the data, go and update the system. So for each and every action, it will start a process,
Okay,
and it's each process will handle its own data passed by this workflow. It will update, close it. The next process, it will run, update, close, like that.
okay, got it.
So all that depends on how you want to configure.
Right, right. I'm clear now. Yeah.
So rule of thumb, no UI automation here. Source has to be separate. The
So, what is the condition you have to give if it was to if needs to go to else part in after resume step in current process?
Yeah. So here it's this one. In after resume process name, you just need to set it to false.
If the boolean it initially it was true,
Yeah.
so okay, no, you need to keep it false. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Then it will go inside this part. So now actually it's very easy because all these things are given to you and you just need to fill in the stuff as we did.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you're good with this,
Yeah, I said.
yeah, and we can close for today.
Right. It was a good session I have.
And thank you very much for bringing this up. And it's a very good topic. And it's right on time because they have also introduced this framework. So it's a good way of explaining the framework with a real use case.
Right.
So, yeah, great.
Yeah.
And I
Okay then.
hope this is helpful for you and
Yeah.
also for everyone who is
People,
listening.
right. Because this was very new. I mean that the process itself is very new. I think there is no much enough data also to follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Fernando.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll see you guys in another video. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thank you.